Alright guys, so this is just a quick review of domain and range. We're mainly hitting the high points. If you have any questions, feel free to come ask me in class. The main things you want to remember about domain and range is domain is all the possible x values. Anything that's an x value is in our domain. If you're talking about on a graph, it's moving from left to right. That's following the x-axis. Range is all the possible y values on a graph. It goes from bottom to top. So that follows the y-axis. So the two main things to remember, domain is the x values, range are the y values. Now let's look at a couple of examples of these. The first one we're going to look at is a table. If you see a table with domain and range, you should be very happy. It says over here that since the domain includes the x values, we just list those values. So I'm going to come over here to my x column. I'm going to say d equals, and I'm going to open up my curly brace. And I'm just going to list those x values. I've got -2, I've got 0, 4, and 8. So that wasn't too bad. The range includes all the y values. Remember, f of x is the same as y. So I'm going to just list those values. So I have r equals, open my curly brace. I have 1, 8, 18, and 32. So if you see a table and they're asking for domain and range, you should be really happy because that should not be too rough. Let's look at some graphs. Now this next one is just 4 points on a graph. This is discrete information. All it's talking about are those 4 specific points and nothing else, nothing in between them. There are no lines connecting them, so we don't have to worry about anything else. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and open up my d equals with my curly brace. And essentially this works the same way as the table. We want to follow the x-axis to get all our x values in our domain. So I'm going to go along the x-axis and go from left to right. If I start left, the first point I get to is at an x value of -5. If I keep going to the right, my next x value is at -2. Keep moving to the right, my next one is at 2. If I get my last point on the right, it goes to 5. So those are my x values. I listed them for my domain. Now if you remember, range is our y values. So I'm going to start on the y-axis and move my way up. My first point looks like it's here at my first point's here at -4. My second point is here at -2. My third point's up here at +3. My last point's up here at +5. So again, not really much harder than the table, but be careful. Another way to do it, of course, you could list out your points. It looks like I have a point at -5, 3. And if you notice, I have -5 in my domain and I have 3 in my range. So hopefully that helps out there. Let's go to the next one. Now this one's a little bit different. You have to watch out for a couple of things. Plus this one is what we would call continuous. It means it's not just including the points that are on the graph. It's all the lines, all of everything in between them connected by the line. So this is where we want to use from left to right and from down to up. So I'm going to write domain. I'm going to open up my curly braces, but this time it's going to be a little bit different. So I'm going to write x such that. This just signifies that I'm looking for my domain. So what I want to do, guys, since it's domain from left to right, I want to draw a line as left as I go and as right as I go. So it looks like those values are -5 and 5. So I'm going to write the smaller one first, -5. Now -5, since my lines are going this way and my x's are getting bigger, is as small as my x's can get. So I'm going to put that it's less than, but it's got a solid point, so it's less than or equal to. The values that we're finding are all x values, so I'm going to go ahead and write that. And now this last point is all the way over here at 5. Well, all my x's and -5 have to be less than that, so x is less than 5. And since it's an open point, it stays that way. Remember, open points less than or greater than, closed points less than or equal to, greater than or equal to. I'll close my curly braces, and I have my answer. I'm going to erase just a little bit of this so it doesn't get confusing when we do the range. Now, r, and we're going to write y such that, signifying we're talking about range now. And I want to see how low it goes and how high it goes. So every y value in between here is going to be in our range. So I want to look at my low one first. Looks like it's at -5. Now this is the lowest possible point and it's solid, so that's going to be less than or equal to all the y values in my range. I go all the way up to 3. Now that's as big as I get, so everything else has to be less than that, but since it's a closed circle again, I write equal to. So these are general, I mean, this is going to be multiple choice on your STAR test. If you can pick out the left, right, the down, up, then all you have to worry about is opening closed circles in the direction of your inequalities. So be careful there, shouldn't be too bad. Let's go to the next one. Now these are a little bit different because if you look, the lines have arrows, okay? That means they go on forever in that direction. So let's talk about domain first. I'm going to say x such that again. But this time, I want to see how far left and right it goes. It only goes where I can see to the left. I can't tell how far right it goes because it goes on forever. So I know that I'm going to have x values. Now if I follow this line, my x's are getting bigger and bigger and bigger as I go down. So that x is bigger than all my possible values, plus it's equal to, since it's a solid dot, well, it's greater than and equal to how far left it goes, which was at -3. So there's your domain. Range. Set up our notation. I'm going to go ahead and erase a little bit of this. Now this is where we want to see how low and how high it goes. Well, I can tell how low it goes, but again, it's got the arrow. I can't tell how high up it's going to go, but I know as I follow the line, my y values are getting bigger and bigger. So I'm going to have y is greater than, and again it's equal to because it's a closed point. Well, the lowest point I have is 2, so all my y's in my range are greater than that. I've got my domain and range for this graph. So if it has an arrow at the end, it's not going to be in between two numbers. It's going to be greater than or less than some numbers. Let's look at this last equation real quick, or this last graph. Now notice this one going in the opposite direction also has an open point. So we're talking about greater than and less than. So let's see, I've got domain. I've got x such that. Well, remember, it's from x, it's from left to right, but I can't tell how far left it goes, but I can tell it goes all the way up to 1. So I'm going to have my x and my 1. But notice as I follow the line this way, my x's are getting smaller and smaller. So my x is going to be greater or less than 1. My 1 is as bigger as it gets. X gets smaller as we follow the line. Range. That was the horrible curly brace. We have y such that. Now I'm going to erase a little bit here so we don't get confused again, but remember, range is from bottom to top. If I go all the way up to the top, I'm at 2, and notice as I follow the line, my y values get smaller and smaller. So I'm going to have y. It's going to have to be smaller than the biggest point I have is 2. So there's your domain and range. Now guys, that's a quick overview. Didn't give much detail, so if you have questions on any of these, just let me know. I hope this helps out.